We can dress it up however you want, but drawing against Wolverhampton Wanderers after being 2-0 up, that is the Arsenal that Arteta hoped he'd buried.
You can draw at Brentford, you can draw against Liverpool, but this one last night, I think is massive.
If you're champions elect, you go 1-0 up against one of the worst teams the Premier League's ever seen, still at the moment, the worst team the Premier League has ever seen in terms of points. If you go 1-0 up after 4 minutes, you have to kill the game. And this is my problem with Mikel Arteta. He's got his team playing with a handbrake on.
Manchester City win all of their games between now and the end of the season, they win the title. If Arsenal win all of their games between now and the end of the season, they win the title. Have they basically handed the keys of the title race back to Pep Guardiola?
I think Arsenal have definitely handed it to City, but this is not a vintage Manchester City side. This should have been Arsenal's year.
This is a team that have been playing low-risk football over the course of the season, and they have been trying to plot their way through the season. That's absolutely fine if it works out. But if it doesn't work out, you know that approach is going to be criticised, and quite rightly so. It's Premier League All Access with me, Sam Matterface. I'm coming to you live from Mostar in Bosnia, where I'm following Crystal Palace on their historic Conference League journey. I've just come back from a run, would you believe, 12 kilometres around the famous old town, going past the Stari Most. Do you know what that is? Do you know what that is, Crook?
Can't say I do.
It's a bridge. It's a famous bridge. And it's legendary for local daredevils who test their bravery by leaping 24 metres into the freezing Neretva River. Now, obviously, I got to the top, looked down and went, absolutely no chance. It's a terrifying drop, though maybe not quite as steep as Arsenal's fall after the 70th minute against Wolves last night. Scott, hello.
Good morning, mate. How are you? Yeah, you should have done it. You should have just jumped in and see what. I'm sure you'd be fine.
Oh, I'm sure I would. Yeah. Also with us, a man who delivers transfer scoops in the same terrifying speeds as a Bosnian bridge diver. Crookie, are you okay?
I'm good. It's a bridge of tears for Arsenal fans at the moment, isn't it?
Well, look, we can dress it up however you want, but drawing against Wolverhampton Wanderers after being 2-0 up, that is the Arsenal that Arteta hoped he'd buried, Scott, isn't it? We've spent all season that this team is going to be different. This team is going to be slightly more mentally strong. But the second the pressure builds, the wheels start wobbling. Have they basically handed the keys of the title race back to Pep Guardiola and said, here, you take it? Or is it just the ebb and flow of a very, very tight title race and fall on us for being so judgmental?
Look, I think it's somewhere in between. I said it last week, didn't I, about how this is what the Premier League is meant to be. This is the most brutal, the richest, the most physical league in the world. And we don't want to be seeing teams running away with it with 10 games to go. This is what, we're looking forward to. But this is not a vintage Manchester City side. This should have been Arsenal's year. And look, I've kind of backed Arsenal a little bit because I backed them right at the start of the season, but I said this is what happens, the ebb and flow of games. And you can draw at Brentford, you can draw against Liverpool. I think the Manchester United defeat was a blow, but then they bounced back really well against Leeds. But this one last night, I think is massive. I really do. I think it's a massive blow to their confidence, to the belief. I've said for a few weeks now, the only way I feel that Arsenal won't win it is through their fans. Well, the fans are going to get even more nervous now. And yeah, Manchester City just feel like, don't they, with the signings of Semenyo and in particular Mark Guehi, that they're ready to go. So the fact that it's still in Arsenal's hands, but actually it's also in Manchester City's hands, I think Arsenal have definitely handed it to City. But there'll be more twists and turns, Sam. There'll be more twists and turns.
In what other league in the world are the top team 2-0 up against the bottom team who couldn't win for toffee, score for toffee, or actually do anything at all before about 2 weeks ago and end up drawing 2-2? That just doesn't happen anywhere else, does it, Crook?
No, it doesn't, and it underlines the competitive nature of the Premier League. But listen, as much as we should applaud Rob Edwards and his players for the way they fought back, let's make no mistake about it. They weren't in the game for half an hour, and Arsenal went into cruise mode, went into stroll mode, whatever way you want to label it, and they handed the initiative for Wolves to get back into the game. If you're champions elect, you go 1-0 up against one of the worst teams the Premier League's ever seen, still at the moment, the worst team the Premier League has ever seen in terms of points. If you go 1-0 up after 4 minutes, you have to kill the game. And this is my problem with Mikel Arteta. He's got his team playing with a handbrake on because they go 1-0 up and their natural reaction is not to go hunting the second, the third, the fourth goal to put the game to bed, as I think Manchester City would in similar circumstances. Their natural reaction is just to keep the ball, pass it around lethargically. And then when Wolves did go up through the gears, Arsenal had no answer. Their fans, I can tell you, they're feeling the heat this morning. They're blaming the media for this narrative that Arsenal are bottling the title, but the facts don't lie.
Well, it doesn't help that you're reveling in it. For a team that have prided themselves, Scott, on brilliant defensive displays, I was absolutely baffled by the fact that they were so disorganised for that final goal. I mean, David Raya and Gabriel getting in a right old tangle. He's got to come out and take charge of that. If he's going to come out and go for it, he's got to get it. He's got to make sure he takes everything out. And I don't know if there was a bit of miscommunication. I mean, look, come on. It was pretty unlucky that the shot comes off Calafiori, comes off the post, and then comes off Calafiori again and then goes in. I mean, crikey. I mean, it wasn't exactly the cleanest goal you'll ever see. But defensively, it did look a right mess, and that's just not Arsenal, Scott.
No, and they're the type of goals and the type of moments that the Arsenal fans are looking at, and then the glass half empty side of them will say, it's not our season again, because that was a freakish goal. You're absolutely right to mention what happened with Calafiori playing a 1-2 off the post and it going in. But the actual, it came because absolutely it was a miscommunication. And if the keeper's going to come, he has got to scream his head off. So the centre-back is almost scared and he moves out the way. And if Gabriel doesn't move out the way, then David Raya has got to let him head the ball out. I mean, there was no Wolves player within 2 or 3 yards of them. So if he had have screamed, if he had have moved out the way, it's a simple catch. He dives on the floor. He kills 30 seconds. The game is absolutely over. And yet, look what happened. And now everybody is piling on, including Crookie, is piling on Arsenal. And the Arsenal fans are thinking, see, this is what we do. This is what we crumble. But I've gone through the remaining 12 games. And then I realised, I actually thought, Arsenal will still win the title. And then I thought, what happened last night? I'd have predicted a comfortable win for them against Wolves.
Yeah.
You can't predict.
Because their fixtures are quite kind, aren't they? I think they've only got 2 of the top 6 left to play, and that's Chelsea and Manchester City. And the Chelsea game is just around the corner. And of course, we're going to talk about the North London derby in just a moment. Crook and I are going on Sunday, and we cannot wait, by the way, for this because it is it's an amazing narrative. We'll get to it in just a second. And then, of course, they have that big game against Manchester City. But both things are true. If Manchester City win all of their games between now and the end of the season, they win the title. If Arsenal win all of their games between now and the end of the season, they win the title. So, we're still in a situation where the race is in the balance, which is great for the Premier League and great for the neutral. Not great if you are an Arsenal supporter, especially if you're an Arsenal supporter who knows Alex Crook. It is a little bit concerning, though, isn't it, that their most creative moment probably came from the centre-back passing to the left-back for the second goal. And that is one of the issues. I know you said earlier on that all they do is just, they don't go for the jugular, they don't pass the ball around just lethargically and try and wait the game out. I'm not sure that's true. I wonder whether or not actually they're lacking a little bit of creativity.
Maybe, and we spoke about him on the podcast we did on Monday. It's pretty damning of Eberechi Eze, big money summer signing. He's got a hat-trick in a North London derby, but when they don't have a number 10 because Ødegaard is injured, Havertz is injured again, they would rather play Bukayo Saka in that position than out wide than put Eze on from the start. So I'm not sure where his Arsenal career is really going. But just on what Scott said there about, the goalkeeper should have just collapsed on top of the ball, he'd have wasted time. It's ironic they didn't do that because they were quite good at wasting time. And I thought it was embarrassing that Declan Rice, who obviously set up the goal after 4 minutes, he took 55 seconds to take a corner at 2-1. You've got players rolling around on the floor to try and waste time as well. This is the champions in waiting against a terrible Wolves team. Time wasting. How humiliating is that? And obviously it comes back to bite them because they concede the goal late in the game.
Average time to take a corner in the Premier League, Scott, do we know?
No idea. Go on. You'll tell us.
36.9 seconds. So he wasted an extra 20 seconds. Is that the worst transgression?
Not even that.
I just thought optically it looked pretty poor. It smacked of that anxiety, that nervousness that that is coming from the terraces onto the pitch.
Sounds like you're adopting another narrative, to be honest with you, to twist the knife into Arsenal.
I don't agree with Crookie on that particular example. I think when you're right at the very end, is game management. It doesn't matter who you're playing. But I do agree with him in terms of, just having a little bit more of a free, open style. You asked me a question a couple of weeks ago, is this the right sort of tactics for Mikel Arteta? And I looked at the table and there were 9 points clear, albeit with City having a game in hand. But at the same time, the season is a long season. And in moments like this is where you have to kill the game off. I mean, they weren't just 1-0 up, they were 2-0 up against, as Crookie says, one of the worst sides in the history of the Premier League. These are the moments that creep into your mind where suddenly, as Sir Alex Ferguson famously said, squeaky bum time, can you handle the pressure? We know Pep's been there. We know the majority of the City players have been there, but not all. It's not the same City side. But Arsenal have repeatedly in the last 3 years got close and fallen away. And, I hope for their sake they don't do it, but also, I love Pep and everyone will jump on him if they don't win it again, saying it's about time he goes. So in this sense, with Chelsea not around, I can't lose.
Do you know what? It's fascinating, isn't it? Because, like you said, there's so much noise around it. But we have been saying this is a team that have been playing low risk football over the course of the season, and they have been trying to plot their way through the season without really overextending themselves and just getting the job done, knowing that it's a long season. Now, that's absolutely fine if it works out. But if it doesn't work out, that approach is going to be criticised. And quite rightly so, right? Because if it doesn't work, then you did get it wrong. So I think we have to wait till the end of the season before we decide whether or not this is the right approach or the wrong approach. Because until the result is in, you can't tell.
You say plot, I say plod. There's a subtle difference between the two. If they win it, Arsenal fans will say the means were worth the end. If they don't, then I think they're going to have some serious soul searching to do, because Scott's right. This is not a great Manchester City side, and this should have been the year. Not only Arsenal won the league, I think they should have won it quite comfortably, and it doesn't look as if that is going to be the outcome now. And there's another graphic they put up on television last night, points won by Arsenal and Manchester City in the final 12 games, the last few seasons. Pep absolutely smashes Mikel Arteta in that regard. So history tells us that Manchester City come to the boil at this stage of the season, and Arsenal tend to wilt, whoever they're playing. We'll go back to a couple of years ago when they lost at home to Aston Villa, which basically cost them the title. There was another season around Christmas time when they managed to drop points against West Ham and Fulham.
What about the game against Southampton? Do you remember that game when Gary Ramsdale kicked the ball at Charlie Alcaraz?
Yeah, so I don't think you can take any of their fixtures for granted.
A quick word on Wolverhampton Wanderers, Scott. I mean, obviously, they're not going to survive, but great moment for 19-year-old Tom Edozie, scoring on his debut. I mean, him and Mane, I mean, what worries me about this is that I was just about to say they'll be great in the Championship next season, but knowing Wolverhampton Wanderers, they'll probably sell them in the summer.
Yeah, I think Mane could go. I think it'd be quite early for Edozie. I mean, what a moment for him and his family, and it was a really good technique, really good strike. He still had to stay over the ball. So, yeah, there's a talent there for sure. And look, Rob Edwards has got a lot of stick, hasn't he? And rightly so, in my opinion, for saying what he said at Middlesbrough at the start of the season, then jumping ship. There's every chance that those two teams could swap. But I think he's done pretty well. He was saying 3 defeats in 11. I was there for the Chelsea game where it was 2 horrendous mistakes by the defenders that the manager can't do anything about. I think he's doing well. And if they give him a chance next season, they will have a chance of going straight back up.
Okay, it's back-to-back games without a win for Arsenal. Next up, it's a trip across North London. Yes, the North London derby, Sunday, 4:30. Crook and I will be there for Game Day Live. 3 weeks ago, this was a guaranteed Arsenal win. Not so sure now, given the form and Spurs' new manager, Crookmeister. What about the Apple boy? Is he going to settle in and take a big bite out of Arsenal's title hunt?
Listen, he's got history, hasn't he, of coming into clubs towards the end of a season, getting an uplift, getting some positive results. That's obviously why Tottenham are attracted to him. I thought it was really interesting that the names in the frame for this interim job weren't Premier League experience. You had Marco Rose, obviously at Borussia Dortmund and Leipzig. You had Edin Terzic as well, the former Dortmund manager, and obviously they ended up going with Igor Tudor. So I'd like to
I
know
suppose
that.
Edin Terzic probably has got Premier League
Yeah,
experience on the
as
basis that he was
a
assistant
coach.
manager
Yeah,
at West Ham for one.
but the fact they weren't going for a former Premier League manager, I think is really interesting. Maybe it suggests there's not actually that bigger pool to choose from when it comes to managers who have taken charge in the Premier League. Southampton hired Ivan Juric for the same reason, and that turned out to be an absolute disaster. I'm not saying Tudor is going to be Juric 2.0, but I do think it's a risky appointment. I do think it's a risky appointment. I think I'd have been more confident for Spurs if they'd have got Harry Redknapp out of retirement. I really do, and that may sound really simplistic, but I think he would have come in, given the dressing room a lift. His man management skills, I think, would have been able to nurse them out of this situation. I don't know if Igor Tudor can do that in the Premier League.
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
sure
the
Tottenham
first
do either.
thing. The first thing is that you did say actually on Monday's podcast, this has got Ivan Juric vibes about it. So when you say, I'm not saying it's the same thing, you basically have already done that. And the Igor Tudor thing, is that because, and this is not me to be disrespectful, I'm just asking the question, is that because you don't know who he is? So your frame of reference is not there? Because ultimately he has had an impact at big clubs on short-term basis before.
Yeah.
So his CV suggests that actually this is the perfect role for him. He might not be a long-term manager.
It's a different
He's a
beast,
bit of
though,
a
Sam.
firefighter.
The Premier League is a different beast, and Tottenham are a strange football club. And again, this is going to sound like I'm having a dig at the supporters. I'm not, but I do think their fans have unrealistic expectations when you look at the history in modern times of Tottenham. So this guy is going to have to hit the ground running. He's going to have to win games, and he's going to have to play a certain brand of football.
Not easy to do when you've got 15 players unavailable and only really 11 senior pros that can play this week. Now, I heard this thing this week. Apparently, Xavi Simons is being lauded by the Spurs fans for turning down a 5-day holiday so that he could work to get even better. They should all be turning down a 5-day holiday to get better. Everybody, no one should be going on holiday. Everybody
should be on holiday in the first place.
Exactly.
Who loses a game, gets the manager fired, and gets 5 days off?
It's
I know for
unreal.
a fact a couple of the players have jetted out to Dubai to get a bit of winter sun. It's unbelievable.
Crikey.
Okay.
Because Scott's going to tell us now that everyone deserves a holiday and that football as well, it's not fair that they shouldn't get one mid-season. Crookie has one. But at the end of the day... But at the end of the day, what message does it send to the Tottenham fans? Oh, by the way, we've got the manager sacked and now we're going off to Dubai for a jolly.
No, that's not what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is, I think if Thomas Frank was in charge, I think sometimes just getting away from all the noise and trying to reset mentally, I think is not a bad thing to do.
Together in a camp, yeah.
Well, together, I think whether it's playing football, whether it's not, you play a little bit of football, but just to get away from it. If you've got Thomas Frank as your manager, now you've got a new manager in, and the style that he plays is very front foot, and Spurs fans should like it. I mean, I am with Crookie that I said I felt that the one biggest thing that the Spurs hierarchy need to do is to turn the fans back on their side with the poor home form. And I think it's as ridiculous as it sounds, an appointment of a Harry Redknapp or Glenn Hoddle just immediately does that. So there's no new manager bounce with Igor Tudor, or no new manager good feel factor with Igor Tudor, the appointment of him. But what he does do, and he showed good football at Verona and Marseille. He did well at Juve and Lazio as well. He wants to be front foot, but it's physically demanding. So if you've got 5 days off doing nothing, sitting by the pool, when actually you should be running and getting fitter, if he believes that you're not fit enough, you're getting paid a lot of money to be a professional footballer. I don't care whether it's Premier League or League Two. When you're down there, you need to do whatever is right. Sometimes a difficult decision might just be a get away from it mentally. But actually, in this particular instance, with a new manager, He needs as many days as possible and as much time on the grass.
And it sends a message to the supporters that we've messed up. We really care. We are going to sort this out. You know, not we're going to go on holiday and come back and we'll sort it out when we get back kind of vibe, which is not what the supporters want to hear. They're already annoyed anyway. The idea of the front-footed football sounds brilliant. You have to be fit to play in it. Sounds great. Not great if you've only got 4 players, which Spurs seem to only ever have because everyone gets injured anyway. So the idea of playing even more intense football, I'm not entirely sure this is a great recipe for success, Crook.
Let's see, though. Let's see how quickly some of those injured players get fit now that Thomas Frank isn't the manager anymore. Not that I'm a cynic.
So you are the world's biggest cynic. Okay, so this is a must-win for Arsenal now, Scott, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And you're sort of thinking, is it a good game for Arsenal? Is it a bad game? Is it a good game for Spurs? Is it a bad game? We know what happened with Mickey Carrick with his first game and how well they did against Manchester City. But, you know, both these teams can't win. Look, it's a massive game for both. Let's look, you know, we're the highlight, obviously, especially with what happened with Wolves, is Arsenal, and they've got to go to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and win. Tottenham have to win. This is a massive game for them. If they lose and other teams win around them, they are right in the doo-doo. So this is just a game I'm going to buy as much popcorn as I can, sit on the sofa and just enjoy.
I'm going to have some of that. Those at Spurs, they do this like chicken and waffle fries. It's really quite tasty. I'm going to just sit there with a big bowl of that and just watch and, you know, just enjoy. It's going to be great. Me and Crook are going to have a great time. Although Crook has vowed to wear a baseball cap because he's scared of the Tottenham fans. He might be scared of the Arsenal fans now as well after what he said on this.
Scared of both. Scared of Mrs. Crook.
Yeah, we're all scared of Mrs. Crook. Come on. Well, can City pile the pressure on Arsenal the night before they play against Newcastle United? Well. That's a good question because live on talkSPORT, 8 o'clock, Manchester City against Newcastle, Saturday night. Newcastle, who can't win away. Eddie Howe is a terrible manager and he's completely lost it. Have won 3 in a row on the road, Crook, including an absolute thumping of Karabag.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. I watched the first half of that game. It didn't see much point in watching the second, but they absolutely terrorised Karabag, didn't they? Anthony Gordon, in particular, I've got to say, was really impressive, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with the team now, because he's utilised Anthony Gordon as a false number 9. Obviously, Nick Voltemada has stopped scoring. I think a lot of Newcastle fans are already deciding that Johan Wissa maybe is not up to the task. So, yeah, I'll be intrigued by the lineup. Obviously, they did well against City in the league game at St James's Park, but going away to the Etihad is a different kettle of fish, particularly where Eddie Howe is concerned. And it was a pretty easy win, wasn't it, for City when they met in the League Cup. So as much as Newcastle are in a decent vein of form, I do expect City to win this game and put that scoreboard pressure on Arsenal.
It's a really annoying situation where you can probably play someone a little bit too much, and Manchester City and Newcastle arguably in that zone because they played each other just, I think, the end of November. They played each other twice in the Carabao Cup. They're playing each other on Saturday night. And then in 2 weeks' time, they're going to play each other in the FA Cup. It's like really like, it's like, I've had enough of you now. You know, I'm getting sick to death of seeing the sight of you, especially if you keep losing, which unfortunately for Newcastle has seemed to be the case. They were well beaten in that second leg of the semi-final. But I think they would have learned from that, Scott. There were certain things in that game where they, especially over the 2 legs actually, where they actually had some joy against Manchester City. And I wonder whether or not they'll apply the same tactic of that, you know, trying to desperately get in behind that defence, using speed to get down the flanks and create chances. If you think about even the second leg, where they conceded 3 very odd goals to go 3-0 down, but had at the other end 3 absolutely corking chances in the same half of football, there might be an opportunity here for them just to halt Manchester City's attempt to catch Arsenal.
Yeah, you know, and I like the look of Anthony Gordon as a centre forward as well, and the pace and that he gives, the running of the channels, the press that he starts. You know, I was at Villa Park where for the FA Cup game where, you know,
we were both there.
Yeah, exactly. Another away game where they found a way to win the game. Now, obviously, there was a madness of the keeper getting sent off, but that still wasn't easy to do, and they were very, very good. Nick Woltemade doesn't score because he's not allowed to take any penalties. That's
Yeah. He did actually score last Saturday
he
night.
did score at Villa Park. Absolutely, he scored very late on just to finish it off, and that's why I think. Look, I get it with Anthony Gordon, but actually it would have been a nice touch just to let Nick Woltemade's confidence go up, back-to-back goals.
Why?
Because it strikers are fragile.
But
Strikers.
he wants to win the Golden Boot in the Champions League.
Well, then it's about him, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he was a striker.
Okay. Well, that's I personally, whether it's the left back of me, I don't know, just would have said, you know what, I've already got a hat trick. I'm going to pass this to you because I know that if we are to go deep in competitions and try and finish in the top 5, we need everyone. It can't just be me. So,
And
would
I
have
agree
given
with
him a little bit
you.
more
I agree
confidence.
to a point, but I also agree. I can see Anthony Gordon's issue here. It's not half time yet. We've got another 3 halves of football to play before we're guaranteed to be in the last 16. I just want to make sure we score the penalty, so
No.
we put this game to bed.
No, he doesn't. He wants to do it for him, and that's fine. I don't mind that. That for me. That's a proper striker's mentality, and that's another reason why I like it. And I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying I understand where Kieran Trippier was coming from and saying, look, this is a team thing here, and we want our guy who's been under pressure. Crook's just said he hasn't scored for ages, even though he did score in the previous game. But if you can get back-to-back goals, then that will give them a lot more confidence. And that's something I would have done. But they look impressive now, Newcastle. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, where we were throwing at them, you're good at home, you're not good away. But they're kind of putting that to bed, and they're on a little bit of a crest of a wave here. So this could be
And
a
the
really
tactical
interesting
tweak,
game.
you know, everyone turned around and said, "Oh, Eddie Howe, he doesn't, he has it's too stale. He can't do this and he can't do that." Well, he immediately changed it straight away. So he changed the way they play by having them with the false 9 and the wingers that with real speed getting in behind, almost like split strikers. They've moved fluidly around. He's changed that midfield. He's had to change that midfield as well. They're slightly less front-footed, so they still put a lot of energy and intensity to it, but they're not as much because they were tiring late in games and conceding a lot of goals. And there is a bit of fight about them, a little bit of spice about them, but there's also unity. And I like the fact that Kieran Trippier lost his head with Gordon, had a word with him, still kept going as they went down the tunnel, and then went into an interview, clearly been told by Eddie, you can both go out and do the interview and apologise to everyone. And then they're like, I love you. No, but I get your point and I get your point. No, but you were right. And I know you were right. Yeah. It was great. It was like, yeah, okay, all right, we've made up now. We're all friends.
Can I just respond to Scott's late tackle there? I didn't say he's not scored for ages. I said the goals have dried up. He scored once in 16 games, Scott. So I think you'll find I'm factually correct. But cheers for going studs up there.
I'll listen back to it later.
you should.
We'll send you an apology if needed, Crookie.
Yeah.
The one thing I would say about this game, Sam, in the negative side of Newcastle is the travelling. You know, there's a lot of travelling. There's a disrupted sleep patterns. They have their own injuries as well. City are playing at home. I just feel as well as Newcastle are playing away, and psychologically they're in a really good place now. City can't blow this. After what happened at Molineux midweek, and City now playing first, with Arsenal playing such a difficult game on paper the next day, they have to put in that hammer blow. They have to win this game.
It would be so Arsenal, though, to get away with it, because whenever they have slipped up recently, City haven't taken advantage. Whenever the door has been left ajar, they've not really gone through it. So it wouldn't be a complete shock if they drop points and then Arsenal go and beat Tottenham and suddenly the narrative changes again.
Well, we do like a narrative, don't we? This season's a little. We could call this the Crook edition, couldn't we? Because it's flip-flopping all over the place. That's the title race. Let's look now at the bottom of the table, where it's a swift return to the dugout for one Vitor Pereira. Vitor Pereira has returned to the Premier League as the Nottingham Forest manager. He was sacked as the Wolves boss earlier in the season. I can't work out whether or not this is a more or less inspiring appointment than Igor Tudor Crook, because this is, I don't know, Vitor Pereira has been linked with Premier League jobs. He eventually got the Nottingham Forest job. The Wolverhampton Wanderers job. Now he's got the Nottingham Forest job. But he eventually got the Wolves job after being linked with the Everton job and almost getting that, and linked with many other jobs over the course of his agent. I'm guessing it's George Mendes. Am I right?
You might be right there, yeah.
I don't know how I managed to guess that. Has been touting him around for a very long time. What has he done to earn the right to be considered a better option for Nottingham Forest than Sean Dyche?
Well, it was only a couple of weeks ago he was touting himself for the Leicester job in the Championship. So this has obviously developed quite quickly. What has he done? Well, I guess if you're making a case for the defence, you would go back to his first few months in charge at Wolves when he did bring a real uplift. It was pints with the fans and very much points on the board as well to steer them to safety. But if you're making a case for not hiring him, you would look at how it unraveled at Wolves, and it was very toxic by the end of his tenure. He might say, well, actually, you sold all my players, which is true. And that's what concerns me, because you look at Wolves, he had Jurgen Strand Larsen in brilliant goal-scoring form. Forest haven't got a striker who can do that in the Premier League, I don't think. He had Matheus Cunha, who was a match winner. He had Ryan Aït-Nouri marauding from left-back. So he had the tools. And I look at this Forest squad, and they've invested heavily. And I think, by the way, we're going to start seeing stories about the future of Edu as overall head of football
And rightly
operations.
so.
I think that relationship is going to come to an end because their signings have been poor.
Well,
particularly
I mean, I'm
ones
not
that
saying he
Edu
should
has
get
made.
sacked, but definitely, like we said last week on this podcast, maybe there should be a little bit of scrutiny on that situation, because
Yeah.
arguably that's where the whole falling out with Nuno Espirito Santo started.
Yes, it was, because Nuno wasn't convinced by the recruitment, and you have to say he's been proved right. You know, Muendo was signed for a lot of money, is now at Frankfurt and scoring goals in the Bundesliga, which again highlights the difference between some of the top European leagues and the Premier League. Alexander Zinchenko came in. Clearly, he was an Edu signing, having had him at Arsenal. They had to terminate his loan. He was so unsuccessful. Amari Hutchinson has just been added to the Europa League squad, but he's not pulled up any trees so far. They've obviously had issues in the goalkeeping department. They've now got Stefan Ortega, and again, he was registered for the Europa League squad for this playoff round. So a lot of the signings don't bear scrutiny. I think part of the issue with Sean Dyche, actually, was that he was telling Marinakis, some of these players that you've hoisted upon me are not fit for purpose. So I think Vitor Pereira's got a massive job on his hands. You can't turn water into wine, to quote one of Scott Minto's favourite phrases.
They are away in Fenerbahce on Thursday night. We're recording this during the day on Thursday. So we don't know the Crystal Palace result. We don't know the Nottingham Forest result. But what is very difficult for Vitor Pereira is, no matter what happens, is that his team have travelled to Turkey, and then they have to go back and face Liverpool, Scott, this weekend. Now, look, it's not an easy game if you've got a whole week to prepare. It's certainly not an easy game if you travel back Thursday night and you find yourself with just one training session, or maybe even just a walkthrough and a recovery before you travel to the game on Sunday.
Yeah, new managers, what do they want? We mentioned about Igor Tudor would have been putting his hair out what he's got left of it, knowing that the players are 5 days away at Spurs. Well, Vitor Pereira just hasn't got the ability to do that with the game against Fenerbahce. Look, I mean, obviously, there was the link with and the fact that he did well in a short space of time at Olympiacos a decade ago, but that was a decade ago, and that was a different football, as Crookie was saying, with the Premier League and Igor Tudor. So I'm with you. Which one are you going to get here with Vitor Pereira? The one that came into Wolves and kept them up, but had the likes of Matheus Cunha to step up and show a bit of magic, or the one that just bombed, had a bit of control of the transfer market at the Wolves and then just bombed this season? I think he's a really, really good coach. Again, this is another one where this is such a tough one to call. It really is. And the owner, let me just say, the owner does have to take a lot of responsibility here. There's the bigger picture, and the fans love him for where he first, picked up. But the Edu thing, if you're going to get rid of Edu, if you really don't believe in him anymore, then what a horrendous error that was to break up the Marinakis-Nuno Espirito Santo relationship, where it was going so well. And even if they did fall away, from a Champions League place to a Europa League place, well, that's still an incredible season.
And you've lost Ross Wilson in the process as well, who's a very capable sporting director who's gone on, obviously, to Newcastle United. So there's a lot of moving parts that's happened at Nottingham Forest. But I get the feeling that Nottingham Forest is a little bit like a sort of a Dodgem circuit. It's always moving and everyone's always bumping into each other. And at some point, someone's got to get off. Obviously the turnaround is very quick for Nottingham Forest, but for Liverpool, they've had a free week for the first time in a little while, and the feeling is that they're starting to play a little bit better. Crook, obviously their ambition is to get back in the Champions League, and it's quite a competitive race now, isn't it, to
Yeah.
get into that top five?
Yeah, I think the Sunderland result for me was really important for Liverpool to become the first team to go there and win. I think was a massive statement of intent. They backed it up by beating a strong Brighton side, albeit one in not great form, in the FA Cup. So I do think a corner has been turned. I do think recent performances and results have been better, and I expect them to win at Forest. I really do. I think, it's difficult for Pereira to balance a tricky trip in Istanbul. And I think the owner's still got aspirations to go deep in the Europa League, despite the fact that clearly Premier League survival is the priority and Liverpool should be fresher. They should be sharper. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be a honeymoon start to life at the City Ground for Vitor Pereira.
I just wonder whether or not, Scott, and I suppose you would never advocate this, but there might be a time when you look at the Premier League table and you start thinking to yourself, we probably should focus on staying in the Premier League rather than worrying about getting Europa League glory.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I would say is, I think sometimes it can be a really good distraction. If all you've got is day after day, sort of the gloom of being down there, then that there's no escape from reality. I mean, I was talking at the weekend, and I also heard Piercy say the same thing with the FA Cup. But at least you're travelling within England. Then, if you're travelling different places, that can affect then the league form going into that Sunday game. But look, the bottom line is 100% all about the Premier League, and I think Forest do not get anything out of this game. I actually think, because Liverpool are on 42 points, it was a massive win for them against Sunderland. It really was, not just because they were the first team to win up there, but you see where they are, and it was a really big win for Aston Villa against Brighton. It wasn't a big win, it wasn't a great win, it wasn't a great performance, but that means they're 8 points ahead of Liverpool right now, and that gives them a real buffer, because I think from third to sixth, someone's going to lose out in that Champions League spot, and it would be unacceptable if it were to be Liverpool. And Villa looking a little bit tired at the moment. The home form has been brilliant all season, but not in recent times. So that win for me was absolutely massive. But I think Liverpool, free week up against a team that hasn't, they've got better players. They're going to win this game.
We love that, Scott. Nice little revelation there, teaching us the maths, the fact that between 3 and 6, someone's going to miss out on a Champions League place when they're only 5. So, yeah, that is definitely true. But Brentford are, hanging on in there, aren't they? They're only 4 points behind Chelsea in 5th, which is an amazing achievement already. But it is very tight for those European places, because basically the way it works is this. England gets 4 Champions League places and a Europa League place via the league. Now, we know that never works out like that, because what happens is that they do really well in the European competition. So they get 5 Champions League places. That knocks everything down a place. So 6 ends up being the Europa League, and the top 5 go into the Champions League. Then someone from the top 6 usually wins one of the cup competitions. We know that's definitely going to be the case, because Arsenal and Manchester City are playing each other in the Carabao Cup final. So the Conference League place that ends up going to the winners of the Carabao Cup, or is allotted to those Carabao Cup winners, goes to 7th place, right?
Yeah.
Now, the FA Cup, we don't know who wins it. We don't know who's in the final. But usually it's someone inside the top 7. So if it's someone inside the top 7, then that Europa League place then comes into the Premier League as well. So what we're talking about here is the top 5 in the Champions League, 6th, 7th in the Europa League, and 8th in the Conference League, likely. Now, it could be, if someone outside the top 7 wins the FA Cup, that it's 6th Europa League, 7th Conference League.
Yeah.
Either way, Brentford, Everton, Bournemouth, Newcastle, Sunderland still have a chance of getting European football of some kind next season, Crook.
Yeah, and you know what? I'd keep an eye on Bournemouth. You know, it shows how quickly things can change, because it wasn't that long ago that some people were suggesting they'd be dragged into the relegation scrap. I never saw that as a reality. I think they did some really good business in January. Rayan coming in from Brazil with that €100 million release clause in his contract has hit the ground running, and they've got a relatively kind set of fixtures between now and the end of the season, Bournemouth. And Bill Foley did tell us, didn't he, on talkSPORT, we will qualify for Europe. It might not be this season, but it won't be in the too distant future. So yeah, I'm rooting for the Cherries, I have to say.
You did also say that you were a little bit worried about what happens to them next season because of the
Yeah,
way that the Premier League start to change their rules.
yeah. Financially, that they've got a problem, because their wage bill is far higher in terms of percentage than what they're going to be allowed next season. But that's why I think they brought down the average age of the squad. You know, they brought in Rayan from Brazil. He's only 19. Eli Junior Krupi is a teenager as well, so they're obviously not going to be on massive money. Senesi is one of the top earners. He's going to leave on a free transfer. They've already got rid of the likes of Zabani and Dean Houston and Semenyo, who signed a big money new contract. So they're going to have to get their recruitment right. But you've got to say they've been doing that for a few seasons now.
Yeah, they certainly have. Simon Francis has done a very good job since taking over from Richard Hughes. And Scott Minto, this week, though, they face a terrible, tough trip to the fortress that is the London Stadium, where West Ham are starting to show a little bit of fight, despite still being in the bottom three. They've actually had a good run of form. Is it a little bit disheartening, actually, that having picked up a few points here and there and started to win football matches, that they're still firmly ensconced in that bottom three, 3 points behind Nottingham Forest?
I think it shows where they were. I mean, they were a lost cause, weren't they? Not that long ago, after that Wolves and Forest game. You know, that was it. We thought they were going down. Bottom three was done. So for them to have to go onto that run and still be 3 points behind, but actually it's only 3 points behind. I think we're all predicting, aren't we? Although we know after what happened at Molineux, only fools properly predict, but we think that Liverpool will win at the City Ground. So it is a resurgent Bournemouth side, but it's a resurgent West Ham side. And if they were to find a way to win that particular game, and scoreline goes in both those games a certain way, Forest drop in, West Ham get out. They're that close.
Yeah, so they'd have to lose. Nottingham Forest would have to lose by a couple. West Ham would have to win by a couple. It could be that they switch places this weekend. It may. I mean, look, if things go to form and West Ham win, Nottingham Forest lose, and Tottenham lose, we could have a situation where those bottom, teams in 16th, 17th, and 18th are separated by just 2 points, which would be remarkable. I mean, there'd be a bit of a panic up going on at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that is for sure. Crysencio Somerville, how important has he been in this run so far, and how important will he be if they stay up?
Massive. And if you remember, in the January window, there was an inquiry allegedly from Tottenham for his services. West Ham, as I understand it, immediately rebuffed that inquiry. They couldn't afford to cash in on him because he's a match winner. He brings that precious commodity of pace, which I still think the West Ham squad overall is lacking. That's one of the reasons they signed Adama Traore, but he scores goals, he makes goals, he can win matches. I think keeping him fit and in form for the rest of the season is going to be massive. Obviously, you've got Jarrod Bowen as well. And what I think they've done well with the signings, and obviously Pablo's going to be out for a few weeks now, which is disappointing for him and for them. But with the January signings, they have taken a little bit of the pressure off Jarrod Bowen. And that pressure was, I think, starting to tell. There was an incident at Wolves where he got involved with supporters post-match. I think he felt like it was all on him because there were no other match winners. So the fact Somerville has stepped up to the party, I think, is huge.
Yeah. Scott, looking at the table, we've got 12 games left. Now, arguably, there should be enough points on the board for Fulham, Palace, Brighton, Leeds to see themselves over the line. How far do you think the race to stay in the Premier League goes up the table? Where's the sort of cut-off point for those that are involved?
Yeah, look, I mean, if you say that Spurs are in the relegation scrap, and they are, then you can't say that Leeds aren't, because there's only 1 point. They're only 1 point above them. And I think even if you look at Brighton and Palace, do I think they'll go down? No. But have they got enough points right now to say that they're safe? No. And we know that both of them have gone on sort of pretty dodgy runs.
Yeah.
So if they do something similar, and what you're looking for then, though, is for others to pick up and not just more than one side. So I think realistically, I think from Leeds down, I think Brighton will have enough. They're not scoring enough goals, but I think they will have enough. I think Leeds have done really well to get themselves into a position where they are right now, really well. And I actually don't think they will go down. But at this moment in time, on 30 points, they're only 2 games away from being in the drop zone themselves. So Palace and Brighton aren't safe, but I think realistically Leeds down.
I'd be a little bit worried about Brighton. 1 win in 13, and that only was the game against Burnley. That's the only game they've won since the 30th of November. And look, we like Brighton. They do great things. They've been a very good, solid club, but they do need some points on the board and need some points on the board quickly, because 1 win in 13 is not great. And look, their next 3 games are really hard. They've got Brentford away this weekend, which is massive, but a very difficult place to go.
Yeah.
Then they welcome Nottingham Forest, which is key to them, right? With a new manager, that's a huge game. That's a huge, huge match for them. They play Nottingham Forest on Sunday, the 1st of March. And then they've got Arsenal at home. Now, by that, if they weren't to pick up any points between now and that Arsenal game, the likelihood is that one of Nottingham Forest, Tottenham and West Ham are going to pick up something. So there's going to be, and obviously if they lost to Nottingham Forest, then Nottingham Forest would pick up something and they'd be very close to Brighton in terms of points total. So they've got to be a little bit careful, I think. I don't think they'll go down, but that run isn't great.
Yeah, and the noise will get louder when it comes to Fabian Hurtzler, because there's a lot of Brighton fans who are not happy. Obviously, 2 wins in 15 in all competitions. You say just that 1 win in the league of late against Burnley. Listen, it's always difficult when you tell fans how they should be feeling. But I got accused of waffling on talkSPORT yesterday by a Brighton fan, and he responded to me on Twitter, and he said the problem is that we could well end up back where we were at this rate. No, you can't, because it wasn't that long ago that you were playing at the Withdean Stadium. You didn't have a home. The club were on the brink of bankruptcy, and now it's a crisis because you're not winning many points in the Premier League. Let's get a little bit of a reality check here. And Paul Barber, actually, it was made public. He replied to a fan who made similar comments and pointed out that actually Brighton had been in existence for 125 years. 113 of those years have been spent outside the top division. So this is not a crisis, okay? And I know Brighton fans might pile on. It's not that bad. It's a bad season, but it's not going to end terminally badly for
Absolutely. You. And do you know what? Sometimes you do. Actually, do you know what? Like, it's like when you've got friends. Like,
I'm going to get hammered.
Like
I know I'm going to get hammered for saying that because I'm not a Brighton fan.
No, you're not. You're not going to get. Well, you might do, but that's just that's part of the course. That's not the only thing you're going to get hammered from because of this podcast. But the truth is this: is that we're all like this. Sometimes we have to do this with Crook. Crook has to do this with me. I have to do it with Scott. Scott has to do it with me. Sometimes you need a little bit of a reality check. Sometimes your friends need to tell you, come on, guys, wake up and smell the coffee. If you're a Brighton fan and you went to the Withdean, I doubt that you are that person who is turning around and saying, we are going to go back where we are. Because I've been to the Withdean, I've commentated from the Withdean, I've reported from the Withdean, and I've sat in the seats at the Withdean. And believe me, right, if this is a crisis, then I'll take it because it's a much different place now, Brighton, to what it was 15, 20 years ago. So, look, come on, let's get real. Yes, it's a bad season. They haven't played particularly badly, but they haven't played particularly well either. And there is a problem there. The problem is that the recruitment hasn't been good enough and they haven't got the goal power that they need to be able to win games in this division. There's been too many draws, not enough wins, and Fabian Hurtzler hates that. And I can understand why he's annoyed about it. But at the same time, there is a little bit on him as well. So, they've got to get together. They've got to find a way to put some results on the board, and I hope that they do. But it is true that they could get pulled in unless they put those wins on the board, Scott.
Sam, I played at the Withdean, and let me tell
That's how long ago that place was in action. So maybe there's not many Brighton fans that can remember it.
Crookie, trust me, if you get a bit of stick, Sam and I are your wingmen.
I'm not going to stick up for him on Twitter because I haven't got the app.
No,
but
listen,
I'll stick up for him here. Okay, mate. Look, he's talking sense. We've just talked. We've backed you up here.
Yeah,
makes a nice change. Thank you, guys. Rather than trying to 2-foot me.
because you never 2-foot anyone, do you? I mean, you're like the nicest guy
bear.
in the world.
The big cuddly
You've
bear.
never had a yellow card in your life.
Do you know what, Sam? It was very popular at the Valley Tuesday night, and not just with Charlton and Pompey fans as well, with Arsenal and Man U fans after the game.
Arsenal, Man U fans at the Valley.
Yeah, they were there.
Where did he go?
We're in the posh seats.
Interesting. That sounds like there's a story there. Right, okay. Well, everyone's gone a bit sheepish. Sounds like I need to do a little bit of an investigation.
I'll tell you what, Sam, just very briefly, it's one of those now.
Please.
Ever since I heard that someone went up to Dean Ashton and said, "Excuse me, is that Alex Crook?" When they asked me for can I have a photo, I went, "Do you listen to talkSPORT?" He said, "Yeah." Alex Crook, what do you think of him? "Oh, no, you listen to him. Yeah, I agree with him sometimes. Hate him others." That's him over there. "Oh, he's got to come over. Got to have to get in the photo." Honestly, I was almost palmed out the way. That's the way.
Do you know what the thing is, though, with him is that a lot of people do get irate with him and annoyed, and then they see him and realise just how big he is, and then they go, "Oh, I like him really," because he's so huge. He's like Hagrid from Harry Potter. Anyway, that's it from us. We'll be back on Monday to review all the Premier League action. In fact, I think we're recording the pod Sunday night, aren't we, Crookmeister? We're going to do that Sunday night after the North London derby.
Over a roast.
So with that, and we're going to go for a roast. So that will be out on Monday morning or late Sunday night. And we will look back on all the weekend's Premier League action. And this weekend, we've got some great football for you. West Brom against Coventry is at 12:30 on talkSPORT 2 on Saturday. We take you round the grounds with Scott, with Adrian, and with Dean Ashton at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Chelsea Burnley, Aston Villa Leeds, plus Brentford against Brighton. Scott is off to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge this week. Manchester against Newcastle is our live offering, 8 o'clock on Saturday night. I will be there for that one. And then on Sunday, Crook and I will be at the North London derby as we take you round the grounds on a massive day of football in the Premier League and beyond. 1:30. Join us for that. We'll see you Monday. Thank you very much.